this is just the beginning.
Happy Wednesday, and welcome to a very special virtual event by Axios. Today we're doing this in partnership with No Kid Hungry. Most of our events have been about big policy debates, what's happening in healthcare, what's happening in the workplace. This one is all about raising awareness and quite frankly, to raise money for No Kid Hungry. You can join us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Axios.com. We encourage you, if the spirit moves you, there's a link on the screen to be able to donate to No Kid Hungry to help the kids out there who are suffering in America, who might not have a school lunch program, who might not be in a family that have the means to be able to provide adequate nutrition. As you're going to see in this program, a much bigger problem than most people realize. I'm proud to kick off the show by saying that Axios is going to contribute $10,000 from our family fund, which is a fund we created to help our own employees through these tough times. We're going to take 10,000 of that and give it to No Kid Hungry. Encourage others if you have the wherewithal to do it. If you don't have the money and you just want to volunteer, help in your community, there'll also be advice in this program on how to do that. I'll be joined in this program by our executive editor, Sarah Gu, who will help with some of the interviewing. And we're going to kick off with a conversation of Billy Shore, who is the founder of the No Kid Hungry campaign.
Thanks, Jim. I'm thrilled to be here with Rhonda Jackson, who runs the No Kid Hungry campaign in Louisiana and is on the front lines of understanding what childhood hunger looks like in this country. We've been working on childhood hunger and the No Kid Hungry campaign, which is the principal campaign of Share Our Strength, for about 10 years now. And one of the most important things we've realized is that childhood hunger in this country is a solvable problem. We have no shortage of food. We have no shortage of food programs. We need to connect kids to them. It's particularly important in this time of the COVID crisis because the economic devastation from COVID-19 has led millions of Americans who've never needed food assistance before to need it now. But we know that we have the food, that it's solvable, and through advocacy to change public policy, through grants to local organizations, and we've made $20 million of grants in the last 8 weeks to over 800 school districts and schools and community organizations, that we can get this job done. Rhonda, it's great to have you with us. You've done amazing work in Louisiana, directing and leading it for Share Our Strength and the No Kid Hungry campaign all these years. Tell us what it looks like for kids on the ground in your state.
Thank you, Billy. So, childhood hunger impacts every county in the country, just about, definitely every parish in Louisiana. So even before COVID, Louisiana was 1 in 4 children faced childhood hunger. Now the rest of the country looks like that. And what that looks like in real time is, parents having to make the decision if they're going to actually feed a kid or if they're going to perhaps buy medicine. What it looks like immediately with schools is, the kids weren't there. And so we had to figure out how to feed kids in different scenarios. Some kids were able to walk to a local spot, whether it's a school or a nonprofit. Some we actually had to do what was very innovative with Baylor University, which was to send meals directly to the kids in their houses. Some community organizations pitched in. It was really trying to identify where those kids were and what was the best mechanism to provide meals to them. So it's been all hands on deck.
So you're talking about kids who depended on these meals at school, right? They got these meals at school. They were federally subsidized. And when the schools closed.
Exactly. Right. So they depended on these meals at school. And immediately in March, basically summer started there, right? So the kids weren't in schools anymore. But how do we get those meals to those kids? And it was needed even more so than ever because even for working parents, immediately jobs were shut down in a lot of places. And so having to figure out how to provide meals to kids was one of the first things that everybody who worked on COVID response realized that we needed to really figure this piece out. And so we were able to do that by coordinating both on the federal level, but also the state level and within school districts and nonprofits, and just identifying folks who were available to do the work and also teaching them how to do it safely because you couldn't just hand meals to kids. You had to use PPEs and social distancing mechanisms. And so it was really an opportunity to use some of the things that we had been helping folks understand for the past 9 years in terms of breakfast in the classroom and grabbing goal models and all those kinds of things. Everybody had to implement now almost immediately.
One of the things I like to brag about our model is the bang for the buck. These meals are 100% federally reimbursed. So the funds from the No Kid Hungry campaign, as you say, go to buy personal protective equipment or transportation or storage or staffing. But the leverage on that, because the food itself is paid for, is enormous. And I think most people don't realize or remember that our school meals programs started when admirals and generals came back from World War II and told Congress that our troops were not strong enough by the end of the war. We needed to start to feed kids in school. And we've been doing that for 50 years now. We've still got a long way to go to reach all of them. I'm sure, Rhonda, you've seen some incredibly heroic and inspiring stories of people working in the community to get this job done. What can you share with us about what's happening in Louisiana in that sense?
Sure. So the FNS directors have really gone, I think, above and beyond in terms of literally putting their lives on the line and trying to provide meals. And they've also kept it because they love what they do. They love feeding kids. So I had early on, FNS directors basically competing to make sure they could not only provide enough meals to kids, but also the best tasting meals, making sure that they looked presentable, that they looked good, that kids weren't just getting something to eat, but they understood that this was also an act of love for some of the FNS directors. And so it was just really, even in times when folks thought that this was an insane process and how do we do this, many of them were used to feeding kids, in the school system during the school day. And so now it was, we're trying to provide a lot of meals to a lot of kids in a short amount of time. How do we do that? And so it's been really good to see that happen and to see how folks have worked together to make that happen.
And because you're a pro and you've been at this a long time, you're using the term FNS directors, meaning food and nutrition
Yes.
directors in the schools, in case not everyone's familiar with that term. One of the things that strikes me about this issue that you and I have worked on for so long is it's not only solvable, but there's a role for everybody. People can donate, they can volunteer, they can be advocates to change policy. How else can average person make a difference on the issue of hunger? And we've only got about a minute left.
Oh, wow. So I think the average person can help by really making sure that folks in their communities know about the program. If they're able to provide support and provide funding, they can do that. If they're able to contact their legislators to make sure that these programs are actually implemented in a way that helps serve kids, that they're able to do that as well. And so those are some of the things that I think folks can do. And I'm sure you have some other ideas they may be able to.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask just as we wrap up is what else can we learn around the rest of the country from what's happened in Louisiana? It's a model for many other states that need to do what you've been doing.
So I think one of the things our governor has been really instrumental in making sure that food and food nutrition was a part of the conversation, that making sure that families were able to provide meals to kids has been a long-standing issue for him. And so I think that at that level, just making sure that folks are able to work with their local government to make sure that the programs are in place.
The governors play an absolutely key role in this. So thank you, Rhonda, for being with us. Thanks for the incredible work that you're doing. We've got a short, brief video that explains the No Kid Hungry campaign and some of the work that we're doing to make sure kids get summer meals as well.
During the course of a school year, there are many families that really rely on those school meals. And with the schools being closed, many families are really feeling the crunch.
There should be food for all, no matter what the situation. We shouldn't have to have a public health crisis to realize that there are people who are so vulnerable.
Together, we're able to really target those areas of the county that need this the most right now.
I have seen kids get on the bus and it's like, I'm hungry. I need to get to school to eat. With this program, it's very important because right now there's a lot of parents without job. There was several couples that came and they were crying and be thankful for this because they would have a chance to eat.
And there's more families that are turning to us right now than even were before all of this. And so we've had to make more purchases to be able to stock our warehouse and fill these bags. And we really couldn't do that without the generous support of organizations like No Kid Hungry.
Very good. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Cahill-Lanigu. I'm the executive editor at Axios, and thanks for joining this conversation. I'm joining you from my home in Washington, D.C., and I'm thrilled to have you meet our next guest. It's Chef J.J. Johnson, who is joining us, I believe, from his restaurant in Harlem. Chef Johnson, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm in my dry storage room, so come on in.
As long as the Wi-Fi works, that's so great. Chef Johnson, I just want to tell our audience a little bit about you. You're the founder of Field Trip, restaurant in Harlem, and you're also the host of Just Eats, a show on Clio TV. So we're so thrilled to have you. And you've been a part of No Kid Hungry for a while. My first question is just tell me a little bit about how you got involved as a chef, based on kind of what you were seeing in your own community.
Yeah, when I was a chef de cuisine or an executive chef at a restaurant called the Cecil in Harlem, New York, I started out cooking at an event that No Kid Hungry would host every year called Taste of the Nation. And we'd get all the best chefs in New York City together, and we would all cook to raise money. But I wanted to know more about what with Share Our Strength and the No Kid Hungry campaign was doing. So I met a couple of people. I shot some emails, and they asked me to come down to Washington, D.C. to share some more time with them so they can teach me more about Share Our Strength and No Kid Hungry. And in those moments, I really learned about what was going on in our country, in my backyard in New York City, but also in other places around the country as Mississippi, Arkansas, California, that there was kids in summer months or school breakfasts not being able to get a meal. And myself as a chef or young chef at that time, I never looked at food as an insecurity. I have access to so much food. So I teamed up with No Kid Hungry about 10 years ago and helped lobby for Breakfast for All in New York City with Mayor de Blasio. We were able to get that passed. And that was my first step in helping a direct need right in my community.
It's so interesting to hear your story. And I think the public has seen so many chefs get more involved in a lot of broader societal issues. Jose Andres is a big example of that. Why do you think that is? Tell me a little bit about the chef community and why you think that, you've gotten involved, but why you think we are seeing so many more chefs these days. I don't know if we lost Chef Johnson. Are you still there? Chef Johnson was just telling us about his experience, personal experience seeing in the community around him in Harlem. Okay, we're gonna switch gears and go back to Axios co-founder Jim Vandehei while we try to get our Chef Johnson back online. Over to you, Jim.
I have the pleasure of now having a conversation with Dorothy McAuliffe, who is the former First Lady of my state of residence, Virginia, and she's National Policy Advisor to Share Our Strength. Dorothy, one of the things when you think about hunger, think about this moment with COVID, with people out of work. Hunger is a much bigger problem in America than most people realize. You had a firsthand look at that when you were First Lady. You have it as a mother, as someone who's been active at at-risk schools. Describe the problem for people.
Well, even pre-COVID, Jim, thanks so much for the question and for having me here today. Before the pandemic, pre-COVID, hunger was a real challenge and problem in America. Childhood hunger, 30 million students rely on free and reduced school meals pre-COVID. Now with schools being out and unemployment and the economic crisis, just the number of the light has been shown on how many families and students were in need and now will continue to be in need as this pandemic continues and as closures continues and as we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the fall in terms of school openings. So it is a real problem. And the Washington Post did a study a few years ago. Over half the children in this country in public schools rely on free and reduced meals. So that offsets their families' budgets on a weekly basis. And it's really important that children have the nutrition they need to thrive and to grow and to learn. And we all know that.
I think a lot of people watching probably take that for granted, right? That a lot of these kids might not be getting a good, healthy meal unless they're going to school. And when everybody said there's no more school, and hopefully there will be in the fall, but obviously there wasn't at the end of this last school year, it takes a big hit on nutrition for children and really does do things that affect them academically, physically, psychologically. When you think about this, when you've gone through these different schools, when you've looked at the policy, what can we do? Like what works?
So, traveling across Virginia and visiting with schools, principals and teachers, dozens and dozens of schools, you hear it. You hear it on a regular basis, no matter if you're in an urban area, suburban area, in a rural area, that children, unfortunately, are showing up to school hungry, especially Monday mornings. Very, very difficult in many of our communities. Even here in Fairfax County, where I live, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, we know that we have over 54,000 children pre-COVID that relied on school meals. So what can we do? That's your question. The question is, yes, it's there. It was there pre-COVID. It's going to be exacerbated by the economic stress and this public health crisis. So awareness is the first step. That's why I appreciate this event so much. It's raising awareness about hunger. Hunger often is invisible, and it often is accompanied with so much stigma. There's so much unemployment now. Folks that never imagined they'd be unemployed are now having to turn to food banks and think about SNAP benefits and other community organizations that are helping. What can we do? We can help raise awareness so that people understand this is a real challenge for many, many people. It will continue to be a challenge, but it's a solvable challenge. So we raise awareness, of the problem, but also to help those in need find where to go for resources. We need advocacy. We need everyone to be thinking about, can they write their congressperson? Can they write their local school official? Can they clue into any elected official that has policymaking powers to say, what are we doing to make sure that we're able to reach the families in need that need this assistance during this challenging time? And then the other thing we need is resources. So No Kid Hungry campaign, Share Our Strength, the organization, we've granted ourselves over $20 million in the last few months in response to an emergency aid. We'll continue to read those resources going forward. We're both granting resources in communities, partnering with local organizations that are feeding children, but we're also advocating in Congress, and we're partnering with Feeding America and other organizations that are advocating in Congress, and we're helping our states, our state agencies find the waivers and the policies they need during this, critical time and this crisis.
And for those that are watching that are of means, obviously money makes a huge difference. This is an event where we're trying to raise awareness and also do raise money for good causes, to get food to kids at need. If I'm in a local community and maybe I don't have money to give, can I volunteer? Like, how can I help if I don't have the wherewithal to provide or write a check today?
You can volunteer. There are plenty of local organizations that are helping folks with groceries, helping families in need. You can also, I do think it's really important to use the power of your voice and to advocate. And so as a constituent of a school board member or a congressperson, make your voice heard, write letters, phone, do whatever you can to make your elected official understand that we need resources, both from the federal government and state government, to help folks through this crisis, through whether it's unemployment benefits, SNAP benefits is our big, big ask with the federal government, that we need to increase the amount of SNAP benefits that our families can apply for during this terribly difficult time. So I think using your voice, and both to raise awareness and to advocate, is a really, really important part of volunteering, as well as that direct service type of volunteering where you're helping at your community, your local food bank. Of course, everyone has got to be healthy and stay safe, and we're focused on low contact and all the protocols around staying safe to prevent infection and the spread. So, but there are many ways that everyone can get involved to help beyond resources, and yet funding is very, very important as well, because we have infrastructure in place, folks on the ground, programs in place that we just need to help make sure that that folks know about the programs and are able to take advantage of them.
You've seen this problem through the lens of the federal government in dealing with national policy. You've always seen it at the state level when you were first lady, and you've seen it at the community level, working through some of these individual groups. Right now, what is most effective when you see a school tackling this problem or a community tackling this problem effectively? What does that look like? Where are the big success stories right now?
I think the big success stories are in those school districts that are going above and beyond in being able to provide flexible ways for families to access food, whether they're partnering with the food bank. I think a big success story, and I don't want to overlook it, is the Stimulus Act. I mean, we have got to get money in people's pockets, meaningful resources in families' pockets to be able to purchase their own food. So there's no one size fits all, Jim. I think it's a question of using every tool in the toolbox, and that is EBT, SNAP benefits. It's the schools that are going above and beyond. It's the food banks that are really doing all that they can. But that being said, we have got to have the federal government step up in terms of stimulus money to put. We know that SNAP benefits are one of the most effective stimulus programs there are, because it puts money in people's families' pockets to buy food, but it also is, running through the economy, going through farmers markets, grocery stores, the food chain. It's just really important that we are able to get food into people's money in people's pockets so they can purchase the food they need. And that's probably the most effective, but all these other tools are so important to fill in the gaps. And there are gaps.
Dorothy McAuliffe, we thank you for the work that you do. We thank you for participating in this event. Continue to try to help the kids, and anyone out there who can help the cause, please do. Thank you very much, Dorothy.
You so much. Thanks to Axios and to you, Jim. Thanks so much for shining a light here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks, Jim, and welcome back. I'm Sarah Gu, the executive editor of Axios. I want to try to pick up where we left off with Chef J.J. Johnson of a field trip in Harlem. Chef, it's great to have you back, and hope the Wi-Fi is working now. That's great. No, let's pick up for our viewers where we left off. I was asking you about you're obviously gotten involved in your community. You've gotten involved in No Kid Hungry yourself. And, we are seeing a lot of chefs like yourself be involved in addressing some of these issues, not just hunger, but broader societal problems. And I wanted to know from your perspective and from other chefs, why do you think that is?
Chefs are touching communities, or touch communities, I think, more than anybody in the world, right? We are the glue to a lot of small communities, places that people work at in their first job. And for me, tackling the space of food insecurity and nutritional insecurity was during COVID-19. There's a lot of Black and brown people just around us in our restaurant that are getting affected directly by COVID. And we wanted to make sure that we were feeding frontline workers. And that's where it all started.
We might have lost Chef Johnson again. I'm really sorry about that and the connection, because he has really been involved in this issue and really has a unique perspective from his restaurant, where it sits in an area with high unemployment and a lot of need on the ground. We're going to have to wrap that and turn to another short video we'd love to share with you that shares a little more about the No Kid Hungry program. Take a listen.
During this crisis, millions of Americans are struggling to afford food for their children. No Kid Hungry is here to help. We're working with organizations nationwide to feed children during and beyond this crisis. If you need help, simply text food to 877-877 to find free meals for your kids. No questions asked, no registration needed. It's just healthy food for kids who need it. Text food to 877-877 to find free meals for your kids today.
Thank you for joining our High Wire Act here, where we're doing these events live. Sarah Gu, very good, delicate on your feet. Glitches will be glitches. For that extra bit of improvisation, Sarah has asked that if you have money, please donate to No Kid Hungry. Do it today. Do it for the next month. There's a login that you can join Axios in doing. We're giving money ourselves. We're encouraging all of our readers to do the same. Sarah, thank you for your heroics. We do cover this issue a bit, right? And thinking about all the different things that we're dealing with structurally that set people apart or set people back sometimes. And when you think about just like broader context of thinking about race, diversity, all these topics, it is often African Americans and Hispanics and minority students at these public schools who might not have access to the same food and nutrition that our kids do. And it has a huge effect.
It does. In fact, Jim, I mean, I'm so bummed that we lost Chef Johnson, because we actually had a great conversation yesterday preparing for this event. And I want to share a little bit, one insight he shared with me that I think is so relevant. He talked about how chefs in particular see they buy food in bulk. They know that there's actually in some ways a glut of food available from the production side. And then they are operating restaurants and businesses and communities with huge need, where there's long lines of people waiting to get food. There's long lines of people, signing up who never needed to sign up before, and they don't know where to go. And so he has a really interesting vantage point about the impact on local communities. And you're right. It's also, of course, if we've covered in Axios in our coverage, like COVID is just hitting communities of color at such a devastating rate compared with the larger population. And there is just the need is magnified, and all these food banks and all these programs find themselves scrambling, trying to serve those needs.
And sadly, I think if you look at our reporting, I think it probably gets worse before it gets better, because a lot of families did benefit from getting a check from the government, for even the people who might be out of work. At some point that runs out, and there's a chance that for a lot of schools, they're not going to be going back to normal. So organizations like No Kid Hungry need the resources, need the money, need the volunteers to be able to help these kids. And it's something you can do locally. It probably touches almost every community in our country, has a family or has many, many families who could use assistance. And so we know it's awesome that so many people tune in to these live events, that they join us, that they care about our journalism, care about the things that we cover. This is an opportunity to give back. All of our coverage is free. A lot of you said, hey, can I pay you for it? Yes, you can pay me for it. Go give money to No Kid Hungry. That's your payment for us. We'll continue to give you great journalism for free, and your thank you will be the donation that you make to No Kid Hungry. Sarah, you live in Washington, D.C. There's a huge problem there.
It really is. And as you mentioned, we don't know. I mean, school, we don't know it's coming back. This problem is only going to get worse. It's bad right now during the summer with no summer camp programs. And so it is a critical time to donate. It is a critical need. And we don't know how long we're going to be in this for. So thank you, Jim, for a donation on behalf of our company. I think that's a really powerful message and a great example to set.
We're happy to do it. And if anybody, like I've said for these other live events, email me at jim@axios if you have ideas of other causes that we should tackle, stories of success that we should be aware of. If you can contribute with money, contribute with money. If you can contribute with time, contribute with time. I always tell my kids, like, there's nothing better than finding opportunities to help other people. I do think you get more happiness, more satisfaction from that. So thank you for joining us for this event. Thank you for putting up with our technical glitch. It's one of the costs of these amazing virtual events that our teams put on. Somehow magically they don't happen. We tape some of the segments. I don't actually change my wardrobe during these. I don't even have much of a wardrobe. I'm in the middle of nowhere with very little dress clothing to choose from. So thank you all for joining us. Give Money. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for all the guests. And thank you mostly to No Kid Hungry for all the great work that you do. Thank you.